Well, you confirmed, I know you emailed me that the executive director of Artbridge is planning to join us.
Yeah, Steven's here.
He's
Oh,
here.
he is. Where is
Mhm.
he? I
The one
didn't.
named Steven.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Well, I don't see you. Oh, there you are. Okay. Whoa, my bad. Thank you. I'm glad you came. Wow, look at those
Thanks for inviting
walls.
me.
Oh, my pleasure. Wow, that's quite a high gloss lacquer on there. It looks like. Anyway, okay, now that you're here, we can get started. I don't want to it's already into the evening. I'm just going to say to everyone that we had to postpone. Unfortunately, COVID, as everyone knows, is not particularly helpful. So we had to, and is worse than not particularly helpful, downright bad. So we postponed our February 12th art show, and we're talking about having it in May. So we have the ability to have it outdoors. And that will get rid of any other COVID variant impacts on the art show. Further details will be announced as they become available, but in the meantime, that's what we're aiming for. So I have the great pleasure of introducing Stephen Pearson who's the executive director of Artbridge. I had the great pleasure of actually looking at your website over the last couple of days, and it's really astonishing what you do. As a backstory, a few years ago when I was chair of the community board, we had invited Gary Barnett, the owner of Extel Developers, who I don't know the official name, who came and talked to our community board and listened to the public's ideas about working together. So one of the ideas from someone whose children at that time were in nursery school was that kids at the nursery school across the street from one of Gary's construction sites paint the construction fence. Will Brightbill, our district manager, looked into it with the DOB and there he is waving, and was told that we have to have a green construction fence, no painting possible. So lo and behold, walking around the neighborhood or any neighborhood in New York City, you see dilapidated green fences, you see green fences with ads on, you see green fences with ads off. Zachary, I sent some photos of a green fence with ads on if you want to show how awful it can look.
Sure. One moment.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So then I had the great pleasure of walking by the construction fence on 77th to 78th in Lexington, and it does not look anything like what Zachary is getting ready to show.
Mm-hmm. Maybe one moment. Show.
And all of these photos, I think, are taken from the same construction site which has been there for at least a couple of years on the northwest corner of 73rd Street and Lexington. So here we have the green construction fence, complete with ads that people put up, and subsequent, there are more ads because the old ones were taken down and new ones replaced them. It looks pretty bad and does nothing to improve the neighborhood. You could see where it's being torn off. Some of the photos, I think, show where the wood is dilapidated and falling off. Well, or shredding and deteriorating. On 78th to 77th in Lexington, there is a construction fence that has been beautifully painted with, if my memory serves me right, flowers. And I was stunned to see that, given how emphatic the DOB was in requiring or expressing its demand that everything remain a green construction fence. It's beautiful, and other people have commented on it as well. So Will informed me that is a pilot program with Artbridge and the Department of Cultural Affairs, whom was invited this evening, but I guess is unable to come. Will? Yeah, we don't know. So anyway, we thought that it would be really worthwhile to try and explore doing more of this in the neighborhood. And there are all kinds of opportunities. So Stephen, I'll turn the floor over to you to hear about, I guess, how the pilot program got started, how you pick your sites, and to talk about maybe ways, if it's possible at this point, to that the community board and Artbridge could work together on some of these construction sites, which so inundate the neighborhood and are so horrible and actually, I think, dreary and depressing to people who walk by without even realizing it, because the comments about how beautiful that fence is, I think, makes people realize how much that kind of artwork can benefit the community. So Stephen, thank you again for being here.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. And that was a far better pitch than I could have given for what we do. So I appreciate that. And also, as a former member of Community Board 2 in Brooklyn, I'm well aware of the value that you all are creating through your work here at CB8. I know it can be quite thankless at times. So thank you for doing what you do. So a 3-minute spiel, and feel free to jump in because I get lonely when I babble. But Artbridge is a public art nonprofit based in Chelsea. We've existed for about 12 years, and 80% of what we do is beautifying the city's construction fencing. As we all know, there's a staggering amount of it. I think at last count, there are 315 miles of green plywood lining our city streets. I think it really, as you pointed out, Ms. Camp, it corrodes the vibrancy of our... Sorry,
Alita.
Alita, okay, thank you. It really corrodes the vibrancy of our city. So we built a pilot program with the Department of Cultural Affairs and the Department of Buildings that enables us to get permits to produce these exhibitions. It was originally a 2-year pilot program beginning in 2019, and we have it extended through 2023. And there's actually some legislation that Councilmember Cumbo just passed that will permanently codify it thereafter.
That's fantastic. Congratulations, because it really does a lot of good for the blocks and the community. I asked Zachary, who from the board office, if he could show some of the slides from your website. If you don't mind, would that be all right, just to show the kind of work that you do? And
sure, absolutely.
I saw that you did around, I think your first project was around the Google headquarters around 11th Avenue, where in the 20s, and on the sidewalk shed, otherwise known as scaffolding, you had a lot of, I guess, emerging artists, women, paint on the scaffolding, which was really fantastic. But I wanted to focus just on the construction fences for now, because I guess I was primed by our conversation with Gary Barnett. So so this was from Brooklyn. Is that right? I did my research.
Yes. And I have some slides I can show as well, but yeah, that's Brooklyn.
Yeah, okay. And I also saw from your website that you can either paint directly on the fence or on vinyl that you then attach somehow to the fence.
Correct. The pilot program allows us to paint directly on the plywood, which is what we did in the Google site, or print on a vinyl fabric and adhere it to it. Okay.
Zach, do you have other images that you're able to show? Right, I picked out this one because it was very Peter Max-like, for those of us old enough to remember Peter Max. Just very bright and cheerful.
Yeah, an ode to essential workers in Dumbo.
And this one I picked because it looks very much like it's on vinyl. And also because you have the bicyclist looking at it and I guess admiring it. So I think that also the variety of the work that you've done, or the artists that you've engaged to do this is really, it's diverse, it's exciting. Do you have any photos of the 78th Street, the Lexington site?
Yeah, if you don't mind me sharing my screen.
Yeah, no, please. Get Zachary that he could just do that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he can.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you should be able to.
Okay, is that visible?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we've done dozens of these over the years, and very proud to now say that we have our first one within CB8's borders. It's on 3rd Ave and 76th and 77th Street. Our prompt was we produced an open call around the theme of sort of the city's grit and persevering through COVID, and maybe hopefully some light at the end of the tunnel somewhere, someday soon. We ran an open call for artists who live within about 20 blocks of the site. And we had a panel of 12 local community members, including Mr. Brightbill, who selected the two winners, Ebony Bolt and Naomi Lawrence. And that's been up for about 3 months, and it will likely be up for about, I'd say, 3 or 4 more months. And there's Ebony in front of her work on 76th Street. And would you mind if I just run through 2 minutes of slides?
No, please do. I think they're
Sure.
enlightening.
Sure. So just really quickly, this is hand painting on the Google building. And actually, I'm going to pause for these 3 here. This is at a NYCHA site in Chelsea. And this is one of the main aspects of how we're implementing City Canvas. Is we're currently working at 15 NYCHA developments. And the idea is not just to beautify, but figure out ways to amplify the voices of those residents. So we work with residents to select 2 or 3 local artists, and we embed the artists in the communities for 2 to 3 months. They work with community members to figure out how the community wants to see themselves through art, be it their talents, their cultures, their problems, their histories. And then we stick that up on fencing, and hopefully it's a way to empower and amplify, New York's 400,000 NYCHA residents whose voices are often unheard. So we haven't yet worked at, I think you have Stanley Isaacs and Holmes houses in your district.
Yes.
But it's certainly in our radar. And if we ever are able to make that work, we'll work with you to get your guidance on that process.
Well, I think that would be excellent and fantastic. We did an art show. Interestingly, we had an arts initiative called City Canvas, but I was strongly encouraged by Will not to use that name anymore. So we're not. But we presented an art show, and there were some artists from NYCHA that came not expecting to sell anything, but they did. And one of the artists, a photographer, told me at the end of the first day, when she had sold a piece, that she never expected to, and she's going to go home and cry. So it was really, it was more than touching. It was very meaningful and compelling to give people an opportunity, anybody in the community. And I realize I'm interrupting you, but our mission is to provide more art in public spaces. So projects like this are exactly the kinds of things that we would be looking to do. And the New York City Commission on Human Rights supports this committee and the work that we're trying to do as well. So I think all of it could be integrated in some productive and successful way for the benefit of the artists and the community, to tell stories, for voices to be heard. But back to you, Stephen.
Thank you, though. That really aligns with what we do, and it's very powerful. So just a few more random images of things we've done in the past year. Sometimes we're just randomly colorful for beautification. This is a mural that engaged with Black Lives Matter near Times Square. The Dumbo one on the Upper West Side that engaged with cultural, historical performances in the Upper West Side's history. Yeah, many more I can share, but you get the idea. In an ideal world, we're trying not just to beautify, but we look to amplify voices that have been historically marginalized. The downside of all of this, unfortunately, is that the city provides zero funding. So we have to scramble for each project. For our NYCHA sites, we get some grants. We fundraise from individuals, and sometimes we partner with site owners who can bear the costs of these. But I'm very open to hearing your perspective and hearing about spaces or partners we could work with in your within your borders.
Well, I'm really struck by the diversity, the range of art that you have, that it does seem to amplify voices. And in that way, I think it does beautify. Beautify doesn't have to be vases of fresh flowers. It could be paintings, photographs, tales, telling a story, and in providing insight to people and other experiences to people. It enriches lives, and I think that's really the goal of the committee. So I was, again, just struck by what you have and the wide range of voices or stories, and that you are able to connect, like the West Side, with the music and the colors emanating in the, I think it was a child from the trumpet, is it resonates, and in itself, to use your word, which is far better than mine, powerful. So I think if there is a way to be able to work on something, we have so many construction sites. We'll leave the scaffolding alone, because there have been scaffolds that have been up really for years. I think it's cheaper and hideous. But that's besides the point. The construction sites multiply. Construction fences have been up for years in some instances, degrading, and again, ads torn off. So if there's a way to figure something out, but in the meantime, I'd like to just ask the public if there are any questions for Stephen. And Will, if you want to go through your, you didn't do that before, or is
No,
that?
I'll let Zachary do it though.
I got it. Yeah. I'll do it really quick.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really quick, this is what we usually say in the beginning of the meetings, but if this is your first time joining us, everyone will remain muted throughout the meeting except for committee co-chairs, Alita Camp, and the presenters. Following the presentation, co-chairs will call on members of the public wishing to speak. You can participate by going to the reactions icon and pressing raise hand, not the wave or thumbs up buttons. Only press it once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. If you are on the phone, it is *9 to raise hand and *6 to unmute. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once the co-chairs call on you. The chat is for technical support, only to help with Zoom software problems, not to ask questions of co-chair or of chairs, or the chair in this matter. They will not see the chat. If you have an older version of Zoom, you will need to go to the participant section where you will find the raise hand feature there. Please do not raise your actual hand or wave at the screen because we may not be able to see you. Chat me, I'm here for support.
Thank you very much, Zachary, for that and for your patience. Okay, I see that Judith Birdie has her hand up from the public. We'll go to the public first and then to board members. So, Judy?
Okay.
You're on.
I'm here. Okay. Good evening. We have had this hideous construction fence around the tram station entrance for almost 3 years for the elevator construction site. And it's dark green. It's ugly. I agree with every single thing you say. For the Artbridge, do you actually paint on the fence, or do you apply graphics that are already pre-printed that are, how are they, how is the mural put on? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Thanks for your question. We can do it any manner. We can print something that's already been created. We can hand paint. We can commission something that's very site specific and appropriate for that neighborhood. It really depends upon the timeline and the budget. But we really like our exhibitions to be very specific to the neighborhoods in which they're placed. Where is the site you were talking about?
It's the Roseville Island tram station in Manhattan on 60th and 2nd. The city park, that's their property, and the construction site was the complete block, and it's been there almost 3 years, and it's just a big ugly green fence, and there's not even a sign on it leading to the Roseville Island tram. The tram staff puts up little 8.5 by 11 posters. And I always wondered why we had no graphics there. Now I figure out we can blame DOT. There is one other, I just wanted to mention, there's one other fund that has done amazing murals. It's called the Laurie Tisch Illumination Fund. And it's something like Artbridge, and they get funding, and they do them in all the public hospitals they've done. And it's sort of the same kind of concept that Artbridge is. And I really hope that we can get funding and because we have so many ugly green walls all over the city at this point. Thank you.
Also,
Thank you.
Roosevelt Island has a very large artistic community, I believe. And there is also a city-run nursing home facility there with, I think, a variety of residents, I think some of whom also have artistic talent and have had a really hard time through COVID with a lot of quarantine time and a lot of isolation. And one of the things I wonder about that maybe we could talk about offline is the ability to do something around or with that care facility on Roosevelt Island in the way that maybe you've done with NYCHA, but I guess we could talk about that another time. Judith, did you have anything else that you'd like to ask?
Well, one thing I will say that the Laurie Tisch Illumination Fund did try 3 murals in Kohler, but when they put up barriers around Kohler to prevent flooding after Hurricane Sandy, they're called HESCO barriers, and they were supposed to have artwork on them. And they're just green now, the same ugly dark green color, and they surround 90% of the hospital to prevent it from flooding. But the murals and the artwork that was supposed to be put on them was never put on them. So I think that's a REAC goof. But definitely Kohler has a lot of residents who are artists. They have an excellent art, therapy person. And anything to make the north end of the island. We have beautiful sculptures in our park up there now. We have the Girl Puzzle, and we have a lot of art on our island. It just doesn't get publicized very well, but maybe when we all defrost, we'll publicize it some more.
Yeah, hopefully that won't be too far in the
It's too
future.
cold and windy to go up to the Lighthouse Park at this point. Thank you.
I'd second that.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
is there anyone else from the public? Well, you can always raise your hands later. All right, let's go to the board then. Rita, if you could unmute Rita, please. And then Vanessa.
Hi, I'm speechless. That's how great the presentation was. Thank you so much. I have a question. There is a theme an artistic theme that runs through your very wide pieces, like a chain, and the chain is sort of uniform from place to place. How do you do that? Are the artists painting at the site, or are they painting off-site and you're bringing it to the fencing where it is?
Thanks for the question and your kind words. We've done probably 40 of these, and we've done them every conceivable way. I'd say the most common way is the artist produce a digital design, we print it off-site onto vinyl, and then affix it onto the site. But we've had artists paint off-site, we've had artists paint on-site. We're very pliable in our approach.
If you have more than a place where you can have, let's say, 10 different artists, do you ask for a submission prior to selecting whether you want that artwork up?
Yeah, there's always some sort of selection process. Either as we did on the Upper East Side on 3rd Avenue, we run an open call and have a selection committee of local arts dignitaries or other people to select them, or we work internally with a site owner to curate that way. But there's unfortunately no spontaneity in this. Everything has to be rigorously approved by the Department of Cultural Affairs in advance. So that component is a little bit lost.
Thank you. Fabulous.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Vanessa then.
Thanks so much, Stephen. Really appreciate it. And I live not far from the 3rd Avenue site that you're talking about. So it's cool to now know where that came from. You may have answered, or you kind of already answered this, but when talking to Rita just now, But I guess I just wanted to hear a little bit more about how you usually do the selection process. And I was really excited by the idea that someone shared just now about partnering with Kohler, or Alita and I had previously talked about a few things in the future, partnering with local schools or local children. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about like what types of partnerships are available and how that selection process could look.
Sure, that's a great question. Thank you. We love to partner with local organizations. You know, we're well aware that every neighborhood, every block is really different in the city. And as a Chelsea-based organization, you know, we haven't the faintest idea of what the needs and wants are of various neighborhoods throughout the city. So if you have a local organization or a local school you want us to partner with that you think would make a project flourish, we would love to do so. And there's really no limits on the types of organizations we can partner with. But just to clarify, like the last thing really we want as an organization is to tell everyone else what art should be. We view ourselves more as sort of admins.
So just to follow up on Vanessa, because again, this originated with the idea of nursery schools contributing to the look of a construction fence. Maybe to be able to work with either a variety of schools or one school, depending on the size of the construction fence, that's something that could be organized with people from the community or schools, and you would be, I guess, the mechanism for helping, working all together to get this realized somehow.
Yeah, we can sort of be I don't know what the metaphorical term would be, but sort of the admin that brings everything together and gets the permits. And you can have the creative and partnership vision, and we can sort of guide it.
What's the process for getting DCLA approval? Are they just basically a rubber stamp, or do they vet the idea of the artwork, the particular artist, the type of installation that you'll do, whether it's on vinyl or on the fence directly? And then does the DOB buy into everything DCLA says is okay?
Yeah, that's a great question. The DOB is a rubber stamp. And cultural affairs, like bigger picture, they want to make sure that the art has some relevance to New York City or that neighborhood, but they're quite lenient in their interpretation of that. What they really just look for are banalities. Like, we're not allowed any text, any words within the art. Nothing obviously political or violent, and no logos for any products, things of that nature.
Placement. That would be a way to raise money, but on the other hand, it would not be much different than the ads that get put up now, I suppose. Okay, Gail Barron. Thank you, Stephen. Gail?
Hi, thank you. Stephen, I think that the artwork on the fences is spectacular. It certainly brightens up any neighborhood. What I'm interested in finding out is, what are we talking about in cost? Yeah, I know it's a range. I'm sure that each fence can be somewhat different. Are the artists paid? How is the stipend determined? How much do you end up in the way of grants? Do developers underwrite the cost in certain instances? In other words, as you've said, you start out, with an empty pocketbook, so to speak, and you have to raise the funds. Is there money for insurance? Who is that covered by? Things of that nature. Just, if you could kind of give me a general breakdown of what the cost might be.
Sure. Yeah, great questions. And it's a very broad swath of answers.
Right, I would assume so.
But, broadly, we're a professional organization. We insure everything. We were founded on the premise of supporting early career artists. So it's very important to us that every artist we work with gets paid a reasonable wage. But in terms of costs, I'd say our raw costs per project are anywhere between $10,000 and $40,000.
Okay.
depending upon the size and scope and how much labor is involved on the artist's behalf.
So for each project, I mean, if, for example, you find that there is an area with a fence that seems ideal, do you proactively reach out, or do others come to you and say, we found this fence, and is there a way that we can have some artwork on it?
Yeah, it works.
Is it both?
It works both ways. Yeah, we have site owners who come to us and say, how can we make this work? And then we try to find the middle ground between what they want and what we view as good art and good for the community. But it works in both directions. And for anyone who's listening, I changed my Zoom name to include my email address. So if you have ideas, sites you want us to research on your behalf, just send me an email and we'll start that conversation.
Thank you so much. Great.
Okay, so as we've noticed, there's an abundance of green construction fences around CB8. Some of them are quite large, like the one that you've done in Lexington. Some of them are somewhat smaller, like the one that I had photos of, which is a half a block rather than a full block, only goes around one corner and not very far. So I guess we can get answers if you're writing to Stephen about areas in CB8, if I could ask if people would just copy either the community board or me, and my email address is camp@cb8m.com, if that's all right with you, Stephen, just so that if there's a way to sort things out together, I kind of know where things stand for the arts committee. But again, those are, I guess, details that we could talk about after. Will, you have your hand up. And you can unmute yourself.
I can. Thank you. And thank you, Stephen. I think I love this project. I have a couple of very small questions, and a lot of them were covered by other people, so I won't ask them again. But the first one is duration of these projects. How long on average do they stay up? Is this something that, some of these scaffolding and fencing can stay up for 20 years. We have, some vacant lots that have needed some improvement for 20 years. How long do you usually keep these installations up?
The average length of time is about 6 to 8 months. Before we approach or take on a project, we want to guarantee that it will stay up for at least 4 months out of respect for the artist and the labor involved. In theory, the maximum is 12 months. Anything more than 12 months, it's considered a permanent structure by the city and has to go through the design commission. That said, off the record, if it's in good shape and the community likes it, usually we're not asked to take it down after 12 months.
That makes sense. And you mentioned there's legislation that would codify this. What do you see as the future of this program?
Well, we have this pilot program through July of 2023. And right now, only us, Artbridge, and the Studio Museum in Harlem have been selected to implement it. So the legislation, which begins thereafter, September 2023, will open it up to everybody, which there are a lot of complications with the legislation. It's a can of worms, and I'm not sure how it's going to be implemented. So.
All right, well, I think we would love to hear more as that develops too, I'm sure. And I know that the community board would love to advocate for this sort of program. So thank you for being here. And if I think of other questions, I'll bug you. But
I'll just say on behalf of the Arts Committee, certainly advocate for it, because given the enrichment of these fences and the photos that you have and what we see every day everywhere, it's there's just no contest. I saw in one of the FAQs on your site that active construction sites are not an obstacle. Is that right? If it's okay,
we can install in such ways that things can be taken down or reconfigured. Construction fences can be quite complicated, and we can usually find ways to make it work.
So if someone from CB8 saw a site and asked and said that that might be a good location across the street from a park, maybe adjacent to a school or something like that. Do you reach out to the owners, or is there a designated, does the city do that? How does that come to be?
It's all on us. The city is there for the permits. And aside from that, I think they direct their staffing hours to other endeavors. But yeah, we would reach out. We have strong connections at every city agency. So if it's a city-owned property, we can make that work. If it's a private site owner, they're usually pretty responsive.
Great. That's really good to know. Peggy has her hand up. Peggy? Are you still muted?
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much for the presentation. And I have to tell you that I know a place where we need your services. There's a huge stretch of green fencing, although most of the time it's not green because it's a mess of ads and all sorts of problems. On First Avenue between 85th and 86th, and then connected to it at the corner of First Avenue and 86th, halfway up the block between that corner and a Second Avenue is a huge, messed up, as I said, horrible looking green fence because it's a large construction site. All the buildings around there have not been torn down yet. Point is that, boy, could we use your services there. What could we do or how would we go about if we could get that fencing turned into something beautiful instead of blighted?
That's one of the Extel sites in the neighborhood. And if Gary is still so inclined, as he expressed interest in a board member's suggestion about the nursery school, maybe he would be willing to have something like that on the fence without too much trouble, especially if it's possible to engage schools. And I wrote to every high school in the district, public and private, about our art show. So I know that there's quite a lot of schools in the district that maybe there's something with the kids, and maybe there's a way to integrate some of the issues with through the Commission on Human Rights. And there are lots of things to do because, as Peggy noted, it's a huge swath of land that's covered by this construction fence, because it's not just on the avenue, it goes a ways down the side streets.
But what about adults? I mean,
or adults. I mean, I'm not vetting anything. I'm not approving anything. I only raised that because that's what it seemed, if my memory is correct, had intrigued Gary Barnett at that meeting, was the idea of the nursery school kids. That's why I raise it. But it certainly doesn't have to be that from my point of view. It could be anything as long as it's not what it is, really.
Yeah, the wonderful scenes we saw tonight about Third Avenue show what can be done if something is done. And these fences are going to be up for a long time. That's perfectly obvious. So if there's something we could do sooner rather than later, that would be good. Is there something that that your services can help us with?
Absolutely. We've worked with Extel before. It sounds like you all are well connected to Gary as well. So I think that's the first step, to get their permission. And then we ask what the timing is on the construction fencing to make sure it's going to be there for a reasonable amount of time. And then we all work together to decide on a curatorial vision for this.
Yeah, please do it. I can tell you that fence, the way things are going, that fence will outlive me by probably a few decades. So any help you could provide would be most appreciated. Thank you.
Absolutely, we'll look into it. Thank you.
Stephen, maybe you and I could talk about it at another time too, specifics.
Absolutely. I'd love to.
Great. Rita has her hand up. Rita?
I'm going to cede my time, though I do have a question or a comment. I invited Lisa LaChola, who runs all of the events in Colshurst Park, and she did on James Cagney, but for some odd reason, she's listed as Derek Enlander. So if you could unmute Derek Enlander, you will get actually Lisa LaChola.
That's good to know.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for
Hello,
coming.
sorry. I'm the community assistant at Wagner Middle School, so this is interesting to hear about getting, younger people involved with the schools, etc.
Okay.
Sure. Do you want me to speak to that or?
No, I'm fine. I was just listening, sorry.
Oh.
I guess there's some work to be done in terms of a focus, and Gary also owns the site on 79th to 80th on First Avenue, and there are two sites, but there are a lot of other ones. But if you've worked with Extel before, I think that's really encouraging, and that's very good news, actually.
Yeah, well, let's email later this week, and we'll find
Okay.
a path forward.
Rita, did you have other comments?
I did.
Go ahead.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Okay. As a former school teacher, every single parent thinks their child is absolutely a Picasso. And because of the height of children, is that it is something that should be done flat on the floor or in a classroom where it can be hung low. That's number one. But there are a lot of people who contribute to Gary Barnett's wealth, which are banks and other people. And he's not the only person that we need to go to on his property, but we can go to several of the backers for, he's not doing it on his own. I think this is really, really fabulous. I think that we can start by having artists submit, and Stephen, if you would see us through the process, if we pick the property that Peggy wants, which is definitely in need of help. And if we could start something, even if we could show them what it could be, I mean, people who are developers don't necessarily have an artistic insight. So if you show them something instead of talking it to them, they will understand, they will perhaps understand it better. So I think that we need to start soon. And Stephen, do the artists all do the artwork in their own place, or do you provide a place for artists to come and draw what they think that they'd like to submit?
Generally, we don't provide space for artists, unfortunately. We don't have endless riches to support studios, unfortunately, but someday in the future, we hope.
We have a lot of empty spaces, big empty spaces like Dwayne Reed's stores.
There's actually another nonprofit some of you might have heard of, Chashama, that turns a lot of these empty spaces into spaces for artists. They might be an interesting organization to present.
Thank you.
Right. Interestingly, they did that in the restaurant that is being, or the space that's being upgraded to another larger restaurant on 73rd Street in Lexington, across from the construction fence that I had all the photos of. But I don't think what you were doing was well known at that time. Will, go ahead.
How successful are you guys as far as like if a Gary Barnett comes to you and says, I have a fence, I have money, is it sort of a guaranteed basically that you'll be able to do that project, or are you still having, like, is there a limited number of these that you can do in a year, or
If I would say, if someone like Gary comes to us with enough money that it's worthwhile to produce, if it's a prominent public space that's going to get noticed, and frankly, if the site itself is not hugely controversial, because we don't want to be involved in sites that the community doesn't like. But aside from that, yes, if Gary has a lot of money, the community supports the project, we'll find a way to make it work.
Okay, so I guess the reason I asked that question is, have any community boards used language in their resolutions to a developer as far as an application for ULURP or whatever to say contingent on our yes is that you will also partner with Artbridge to bring art to the construction fencing during the duration of the construction?
Never been done, but I like your thinking.
All right, I put that out to everybody to think about.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I don't know if there are any representatives from the Zoning and Development Committee here. Stephen, I just have a question. You said just before Will spoke that, or it may be an answer to one of his questions, something about a site that the community doesn't like. What do you mean by that?
Typically it would be something like a huge new condo development in a rapidly gentrifying community where the community doesn't want it, and there's a lot of displacement that may happen due to its presence. So even if we're offered a lot of money, we're not going to endeavor to go there.
It would look a little partisan, I guess.
Yeah, I think it would place our artist in an awkward position.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? I think what you do, and the more I read about it on your website and the more I saw how excited, I'd also like to talk to you offline about L'Aquila, Italy, because I was there before the earthquake and that's very intriguing. But still in New York City, and specifically in Community District 8, I think these are really interesting ideas. You mentioned a couple of times about the size of the space and the amount of traffic that it gets, I guess pedestrian traffic. How much of a factor is that in your decision about moving forward?
Oh, it's certainly quite central. We don't want to go through all this effort and have nobody see it. So
avenues more than side streets?
To some degree, yes. Yeah.
Okay, we have we're a very dense neighborhood, so wherever it goes, there will invariably be quite a lot of traffic, I suppose. I can't thank you enough for your presentation here and for what sounds like your interest in emblazoning the streets of the Upper East Side with artists' work. It sounds really exciting, and we could certainly use the enhancement and the thought provocation that I guess would come along with some of it. So thank you so much again for your very informative, very interesting and exciting presentation. I'm just going to ask again in case anyone else. Anyone else? Okay, so I'll email you and we'll set up some kind of time to speak. But thank you really a lot.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your thoughtful questions and your kind words. Very uplifting at the end of a long day. And thank you for laboring on behalf of your community. I hope to speak with you all soon.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Well, Mick Malamphy was going to come and talk about the play reading that we had at the end of September and James Cagney Place. Sorry, I'm bad at names, which was really also, I guess I'm overusing this word perhaps, exciting and interesting, and the public seemed to respond well to it. But Mick is in the early stages, I think, of the Irish Festival for the Origin Theatre Company and couldn't pull himself away from the planning and the event. So he promised he'll come back come to our next meeting to talk about that. In terms of does anyone else have any comments about anything? We're trying to plan, I guess, a year's worth of arts programming, because again, the mission of the Arts Committee is to bring more art to public spaces. So that includes an art show. We were talking and think that the next art show should be, because of the unpredictability and the very negative impact of COVID, can't ask people to be indoors. So we're talking about having an outdoor exhibition in May. I think, just looking at you, Judith, with your hand raised, I think, and again, the arts community on Roosevelt Island, it would be excellent to be able to try and do something over there, but that's probably not why you raised your hand. So go ahead.
Well, you may have heard that there's a lot of interest in the girl puzzle, which is our Nellie Bly and 4 other sculptures that can be seen from Manhattan, can be seen from Carl Schurz Park. And the dedication was just a month ago. And hopefully, well, Women's History Month is March. It's too cold. We are planning to have events with the sculptor and other participants in the spring. And also with Community Board 8 involved in it, because it's very unique pieces and in a lovely location. And hopefully by spring, the lighthouse next to it will be completed. It already has a new tower and it looks beautiful, much better than the tower it had before, the top. So I want Roosevelt Island to be considered. I mean, we do have the girl puzzle, we have FDR, we have a lot of beautiful public art, and our South Point Park has been finished. So we're rid of green fences for the time being, aside from one, which belongs to Hudson Companies, and maybe we can convince them, since they're not planning immediate construction, to submit that to the Artbridge, and maybe something can be put there in the meantime. But I really want Roosevelt Island to be kept on the agenda and to come over. Come take, you know.
Why don't you email me some ideas, and I'll distribute it among the committee members, and we could talk about or at our next meeting something to plan for over in Roosevelt Island, because I know sometimes it must feel a little bit like the stepchild, and certainly don't mean that.
Oh, how can you say that? We're not a stepchild.
I'm not saying that you're a stepchild, but sometimes
No.
you may feel somewhat ignored.
No, we're not ignored. We're just waiting for our ferry pier to be repaired so we can have our ferry back. There's something the matter with the electronics. Now we're doing fine out here in Siberia by the sea.
Well, then I bite my tongue and take it back. It's
Come visit us. I mean, when it's above 40 degrees, you're all welcome to come.
Well, that
So
Cherry Blossom Festival is very, very popular.
We don't use the word festival anymore.
Oh, sorry.
The cherry blossom season, end of April. Okay, but I'm also going to send Stephen some pictures of this ugly construction fence we have sitting across the street, where David Kramer's last building, number 9, is to be constructed. And it's just a big, ugly green construction fence. So I would be glad to send that to him and to send it to you. And maybe we can get Artbridge to beautify that part of the island.
That'd be great.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have the art shows coming up, one in May and hopefully one in the fall, or at least one in the fall, maybe before Christmas too. Or I think we were thinking about October, and not too early to start thinking. I mean, now it is, but not then, to start thinking about Christmas, Hanukkah, other gift giving occasions. And we were also thinking about a battle of the bands. So if you have connections to people who play music and enjoy it and would do so in public, I'd love to hear from you. Again, my email is camp@cb8m.com. We're not sure about any of the logistics for that, but it's something that I think would be really appealing to people, or the committee thinks would be, I could speak for everyone, really appealing to people and would be something very different. The play reading was I think successful. We've lost so much in COVID. We've lost so much in terms of isolation and quarantine and plays and music themselves being cut short, or at least temporarily on hiatus because of illness among the cast, the crew, and all of that is really hard for the city, for the residents, for the artists, and all of the people touched by the arts. So eager to expand again the reach of the arts, but I am being redundant. So is there any, I appreciate everyone's time in being here. The main purpose of this meeting was really to both do a debriefing on the play reading, but primarily to talk to the Department of Cultural Affairs and Artbridge, and at least we accomplished something. So does anyone have anything else that you'd like to add in terms of ideas for programming, in terms of questions, of suggestions, of feedback? Very interested in, if you'd like to do so now. I don't see any hands. Oh, do we need Will or Zachary? Oh, Ema, hi. I'm glad to see you here. Hi, Ema's one of the new board members, and she came to the, not only did come to the arts committee, but she came willing to bear a table, to carry a table from her apartment to make it easy for the artists to show. So welcome.
Hi, thank you. One of the things that I was looking at is Jazzmobile. They bring music to New York City streets, and I think it would be something really nice to have in our district. So that's something to put out on the table. I don't know how everyone else feels about it, but they bring the music to a park, to streets, anywhere in New York City.
I'm not familiar with them. When you say they bring the music, it's live music and people perform?
And people perform, exactly. They do it a lot at Grant's Tomb. They do it in all different parts of the city. But I've never seen anything we have to identify places where it would be appropriate. But it's something to think about. That people bring, people will bring out their beach chairs and sit around and listen to music, and it brings out a nice crowd. So that's something.
It's a great idea. I see Will had posted something about it, so that's something else to consider. That's a really nice idea. Thank you.
Sure.
Sorry, you're muted again. Could you know nothing? Okay, thank you. Okay, Rita?
We have the perfect place for that, Jazzmobile, at the end, at either end of James Cagney Place. We don't have to ask the police. We don't need a street permit. We only need a sound permit. The width of the street is, you can park a Jazzmobile right there, and then you have the entire sweep of the block so that everybody can hear and bring their, as Uma said, their chair or whatever, and enjoy this. So I want you to know that we have the site if you want to use this site, and all we need is a sound permit. And that I have been able to get from our management to pay for this $45 for the sound permits. So something to talk about.
That's a great suggestion, Rita. So who would be interested in talking to Jazzmobile? Maybe you, Ema, or someone else, about getting details of what's required from the community board, how much time is needed, how much time they anticipate playing, what's involved, and how we go about making that happen. Because we have a few months, I think, of cold weather before we can start to think about being outdoors. So that would be good. So that's a yes. You're nodding yes. Okay, so then you'll report back at the next meeting. Great.
And Alita, Jazzmobile is one of the organizations that gets DCLA funding. And they also go to the council every year asking for funding from council members. And these are the types of programs that city council members fund these organizations to do performances in their neighborhood. So this is something where if you went to a council member and said, as you're evaluating your requests that you get from nonprofits in the neighborhood, we would like you to really consider Jazzmobile or whoever for funding in the district to do performances, et cetera.
Well, that's a great suggestion, Will. So do we need a resolution to do that now? Or for anything relating to Artbridge?
I would say a resolution carries weight, but you'd probably want to hear from Jazzmobile first, like what they could do, what they would do, and like what they may ask for. But this is the time of year where they are putting in their asks to the city council and to DCLA. So, and they are always looking for anyone to champion them and advocate for them. And council members are always looking to give funding to things that people are excited about. So this is one of those moments where the interests may all align. But I would probably say like you should hear from the actual organization first before passing a resolution.
What about with respect to Artbridge?
I don't know. I think that a resolution for them would probably be something more like you would like the community board to make a policy of asking for these types of sites whenever we consider applications, or they did say they don't get funding from the city, so you could ask for that, but that level of funding isn't going to come this time of the year. It's going to come closer to June when they're negotiating the budget.
Okay. But in terms of working together with Artbridge on he didn't like the word beautifying, but on enhancing the neighborhood by affecting the look of the scaffolding, whatever they call them, and the construction fences, that we could just do without something. Okay, Peggy?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't think at this juncture we need something about Artbridge. If some specific project comes up that requires funding or somebody's approval or something like that. But right now, I think we were just sort of having a discussion, right? Throwing out ideas. So.
Or talking about specific projects like the fence on First Avenue, but just in terms of being able to move forward, better safe than sorry. But if we don't need one, then that's fine, and that makes it a lot easier. We have a full agenda tomorrow night anyway. It is tomorrow, right? The full board meeting. Tomorrow is Wednesday. Okay. Any old business then? Any new business? Okay, well, I think we have ambitions for moving forward and different ways of tapping into both the artistic bent of the neighborhood and artistic interests of the neighborhood, and artistic talent of the neighborhood. So I'd like to thank you all for being at our meeting. I look forward to doing more and engaging the public and the artists in our neighborhood, and there are vast there are lots of artists in all different types of media, so that's good. And anyway, thank you all so much for coming. Any ideas, anything you want to discuss, always you can reach out to me. My email was in the chat, and I look forward to hearing all of you. And again, thank you for coming. Happy New Year. Hope that we all have a better year. So thank you. And thank you, Will, and thank you, Zachary, very much. Good night. Zachary, thanks for having those photos.
Of course. Good night.
Good night.